Hello everyone, it's Jamal Thomas. Welcome to the Progressive Soapbox. So hope everyone is doing okay. It's 3:05 on a Wednesday. It took longer to fix my issue, but nevertheless I'm back, and I'm probably going to be back for the next few hours. Good, sound is good. Guys, if you like the content and you're one of the people who view the channel, please feel free to click the bell to get a notification. Apparently people haven't been getting their notifications, so please click the bell and please subscribe if you enjoy the content. Even if you don't agree with me most of the time, if you agree with me half of the time, part of the time, if you give me the benefit of the doubt, great. If you enjoy, or at the very least, how can I say this? If you enjoy disagreeing with me on this, please hit the bell. I guess I'm saying either way, if you watch my content and you enjoy it, please subscribe. I've had a pretty decent boost recently, and I want to thank everyone who's given me that boost, meaning the subscribers who subscribe to the channel. If you assist through PayPal, Super Cash, Super Chat, I think they call it, or if you assist through Patreon, if you share my videos, if you like my videos, thank you very much. You guys are a big help to the channel. In fact, there wouldn't be a channel without you doing that, so thank you very much. I have a few darker stories that I need to get to this evening, but on the purely opinion side, I came across this article. This gentleman is taking the position: Bernie Sanders has conquered the Democratic Party by Jeff Spross. Bernie Sanders has conquered, foot on throat, hand on staff, conquered Democratic Party by Jeff Spross. I invite Jeff Spross to come onto the show to have this conversation after I get my spiel on this, but this is nonsense. This is utter and complete nonsense. I don't mean bad for Jeff Spross. I'm pretty sure he's a perfectly nice guy, but this piece is nonsense. It's nonsense on a level that is epic. Like, it's hard to get across the level and degree to which this is nonsense, but this is utter, complete, unambiguated, unabashed nonsense. Bernie Sanders does not have his foot on the throat of the Democratic Party. Bernie Sanders is not holding his staff as he has one of his feet on the throat of the Democratic Party. None of that is taking place. I'm going to read the article so you can get his take on this. But this is a characterization of a different reality to which I find myself. Bernie Sanders does not have his foot on the throat of the Democratic Party. Now, just so we're clear on this, and just to be fair, I am going to focus more so on what's taking place after the election. And the reason I'm doing that is because the argument to say that Bernie Sanders has changed the Democratic Party and you're talking about the Obama era, that's not really fair. You have to go based on what has taken place after the process. So fair enough. So let's do it that way. I will try to limit what I'm saying to what has taken place after the process. Now, let's start here. Immediately after the process, I'm going to try to run through these because I don't have a huge amount of time. But, yeah, let's start here. So, immediately after the process, after the election itself, the Democratic Party screamed, "We're united! We're united! We're completely united! All of the issues that we might have had during the primary process, us cheating Sanders, that's behind us. The WikiLeaks stuff showing Clinton Foundation as a slush fund, that's behind us. WikiLeaks validating the fact that we've been cheated, that you guys have been cheating Sanders, and we've been seeing with our own eyes in physical matter reality and objective reality that you've been cheating Sanders, that's behind us. We're a different party. We're united. We're united, and we're moving forward as one. Problem is, people still continue to ask those questions of, did you rig it? Do you agree that you rigged it? And that's important. If you lie to me and say that you didn't rig it when we know that you rigged it, it means that you're continually lying to me. You're still proceeding with the lie. You're still proceeding with the mentality that came before the primary process, the election. We can rig it when we want to rig it. That's what we're stuck with. if you don't account for that, if you can't come to Jesus while you have time, if you can't come to Jesus, then why are we to believe anything else that comes out of your mouth with regards to this particular issue and with regards to moving forward? You cheated one part of your party, not just one part of your party, you cheated millions of people who gave $220-something million to that man. That man was outraising Hillary Clinton, who is the status quo functionary. I'm trying to get across the magnificent fuck up and deceit that went into cheating these people out of their particular constitutional right to vote for the person who they wanted. You cheated in the primary process. And if you can't own up to that, why am I going to believe anything else that comes out of your mouth if you can't have the honest conversation of you cheated? You cheated. They asked Tom Perez, did they rig it?
You said that the primary was rigged against Bernie Sanders. Later the same day, you said you misspoke when you made those comments. Which is it?
Well, you know, here are the facts. Hillary Clinton won the Democratic primary. Hillary Clinton also won the popular vote. At the same time, because of the absence of transparency in the Democratic primary, there was a crisis of trust that ensued. And what we need in the chair of the Democratic Party is to make sure that in fact and in perception, every single day, you are fair and neutral.
Secretary, 10 seconds. Was it rigged or not?
Again, the process, because of the absence of transparency, it created that crisis of relevance. And it created the distrust that people didn't trust the outcome.
Mr. Ronan, was it rigged or not?
Thank you. I was going to interrupt anyway. The point is, not only was the primary rigged, it was also rigged all across the country because the DNC has never allowed outsiders or brand new people to rise through the ranks. It has always been an insider game, and it has been that way for a very, very long time. That is where that lack of trust has come into play. Because not only was Bernie Sanders snubbed, not only did it look like Hillary Clinton had bought or muscled her way into it, then those supporters were denied a chance to speak.
Sam Ronan, just so we clear, is probably the closest, you know, the Bernieite that's on stage outside of maybe a Keith Ellison. He is no longer a Democrat. He is running as a Republican now. A lefty, a progressive, who felt like he couldn't get a fair shot in the Democratic Party, leaving the party running as a lefty. If you want to say, and you want to make the argument that the Democratic Party has somehow changed, why on earth do these lefties feel they need to leave? Same thing with Tim Canova in Florida, feeling like he wasn't getting a fair shot and decided he needed to leave the Democratic Party. He's independent now. But I don't want to go too far to it. Let me hit the article first. Let me give their basic point, because I want to be fair to the article. I don't want to front load it. Bernie Sanders' bid for the Democratic presidential nomination in 2016 was not universally welcome, to put it mildly. His basic argument was that Democrats could assemble a cross-ethnic and cross-class coalition by offering big universal public programs like Medicare for all, free college tuition. But large portions of the party dismissed him as an interloper, naive radical, even just another entitled white male. And by the way, Tom Perez attacked Bernie Sanders for being white, trying to use his whiteness against him. That's fucking amazing, but yes, that's what he did. They have the emails. Which makes the developments since 2016 election rather interesting. Quietly but steadily, the Democratic Party is admitting that Sanders was right. Is it now? Let's begin with the signature issue of Sanders' campaign, National Single-Payer Health Care Program, or Medicare for All as known. Hillary Clinton, who ultimately bested Sanders for the party's nomination, insisted the idea would never ever come to pass. Fast forward roughly a year, and Sanders' proposed Medicare for All legislation attracted 16 Democratic co-sponsors, including likely presidential contenders Senator Elizabeth Warren, Cory Booker, Kirsten Gillibrand, and Kamala Harris. Meanwhile, the liberal think tank Center for American Progress has proposed building Medicare, Medicaid, and CHIP into public health coverage option on steroids. It would use bargain tactics similar to Medicare to hold down healthcare costs. Premiums and cost sharing would be capped to make it affordable for low-income Americans and children and new retirees who would be enrolled automatically. This isn't the same as Sanders' proposal, which would involve no premiums or cost sharing at all, and would blow up the whole healthcare system in one fell swoop. But the idea is clearly a new public option to ultimately swallow the rest of the public system. Do you remember this? Obama repeatedly touted public option before refusing to push for it in the final hours. So wait, so you're saying that just because somebody pushes something for political expedience, that they may not actually go back and do the thing that they pushed? Yes, that's exactly what I'm saying. But okay, let's get back to the article. The extent the captain proposal disagrees with Sanders, it's over theories of change rather than the end goal. Furthermore, Cap is closely aligned with the centrist Clinton wing of the Democratic Party and does a lot of the party's policy construction. The think tank felt the need to release this proposal shows profoundly the ground has shifted in a short time. That doesn't show anything. All right, let's be fair. Then there's the minimum wage. During the 2016 presidential campaign, the Democrats were nervously tiptoeing up to $12 an hour as new national minimum that they wanted. But Sanders' surprisingly strong bid for the nomination had this effect, forcing a $15 minimum wage onto the party's platform. Since then, it's been Democratic default. The bulk of the party in the Senate has consolidated around $15 minimum wage legislation. Meanwhile, the Democratic bill to make college tuition living expenses debt-free has 8 senators and 14 House members co-sponsoring it. In fact, parts of the Democratic Party are arguably trying to out Sanders. Sanders. Are they now? The Social Democrat from Vermont never got around to endorsing a universal child allowance, for instance, but the idea clearly comports with his overall philosophy and preference for Nordic-style welfare states. Enter Senator Michael Bennet and Sherrod Brown, who have a bill that would transform the currently inadequate child credit into closest possible thing of universal child allowance, while this is still run through the tax code. All right, so I'm putting this article at the bottom for people to read for themselves. Ultimately, he's cherry-picking a few senators or a few House representatives here or there that are taking up what Sanders is saying. In fact, in one, he said 14 House members and 8 senators. Do you know how many senators there are? You're talking about 8. Let's define our terms. So let's be fair. Let's define our terms. What does it mean to have conquered the Democratic Party? What does that mean? What does that mean? I have this idea in my head of this term conquered as your foot is on their throat and you're standing with your staff like a Spartan and you're screaming out with your chest plate on. That's the image in my head that I have of conquered. You're naming and cherry picking a few senators and representatives that may be on board with Sanders. I can cherry pick senators who are completely off board with Sanders that match your senators that are on board with Sanders. So let's do this in a different way. What does it mean to be conquered? And what does it mean from the standpoint of somebody who's boarding the ship, who's trying to re-ensoul the Democratic Party and get across those ideas that Sanders is touting? I would make the point that Sanders has not conquered anything, and that if anything, he's just made them better liars so they can retune the message that they give without necessarily having anything to back the message that they give. I showed you in the beginning Tom Perez's answer about whether or not they cheated Sanders, because I think that's important. If you're telling me that they've changed, if something has fundamentally shifted, then they would have had this moment of come to Jesus where they would have said, look, there are problems with us and we need to make those adjustments and make those changes. There's no evidence that has taken place. Sherrod Brown was already a lefty, so Sherrod Brown would pass something like that. That's not indicative of Sanders forcing his will onto the party itself and taking over the party apparatus and getting that party to do the things that Sanders wanted. They fought him tooth and nail all along the way. In fact is, the socialists is not going to be on board with the stuff that the Democratic Party, who is essentially bought, pushing. Let's not make this thing that Sanders is somehow taking over the Democratic Party. He is not. I showed you that one, the clip immediately after the election where they had this unity commission. Everybody's screaming at the top of their lungs that they're united, and yet and still they're having a unity commission, getting across the optics of which you're not united, regardless of them lying to the public saying that they are. Now you can say, well, dude, that's just political theater. That's them lying to the public and lying to get across this idea that they're somehow united when they were not. They were not. The very basic of the come to Jesus moment never took place. They never acknowledged that they cheated per se, or at the very least never acknowledged it that we fucked up from the standpoint of cheating Sanders. It never took place. Never will take place. At least not in our lifetimes, or I would be shocked as shit if it did. I can't say it never will. By the way, so the socialists, do you think the socialists will be on board for this? Listen to this. The Democratic Party starts to say, look, we realize we have a problem. Part of this problem is we became the party of the plutocrats and the corporate wing and the status quo. Hillary Clinton running would do that to a party. But that idea, that image was already ensconced before Hillary Clinton ran in the election. Part of that issue, or part of that image, is that they were bought and that they no longer represented the regular 99%. You know what didn't help with that image? So when Chuck Schumer and I think it was Harry Reid came out saying we need a better deal. We have a better deal. We have a better deal. Nobody knows what that better deal is, but they said we have a better deal. If you notice, they shut up about that better deal. They shut up around it.
Is it the right message that the Democrats are going with?
It's so effing wrong.
Whoa.
I've talked to Schumer. I've talked to Wyden. I've talked to Pelosi.
And said what?
And I said, if you use the term bill again, I'm done.
Why?
Because...
Understand what's taking place here. This is not the entirety of the video, but this is a plutocrat, a billionaire. No, not a problem in the world. At least not from the standpoint of getting his needs met and issues of survival. And he is on here saying, I told Chuck Schumer and Nancy Pelosi, shut up about class. And if you don't shut up about class, I will close my purse strings and you will no longer get money from me. He's not doing this in the shadows. He's doing this in public. Same thing on the Republican side, so they're not any different. But I'm making the point to you that if you're telling me that this is a party of Sanders, why is there a billionaire telling these guys to shut up about issues of class, which is one of the main issues that Sanders pushes? And they did shut up about class, and they started screaming at the top of their lungs more and more about Russia. At no point did the party account for why it lost over 1,000 seats. At no point did the party account for why they failed so miserably on the House, the Senate, and even the Supreme Court, and why they lost the reality shows. None of that stuff was brought to account. They pivoted immediately to Trump and Russia with the idea that if we ride this train until the wheels fall off, we may be able to get back in office without making any changes, any adjustment, just because people are terrified and hate Donald Trump. And that's been the plan that they've used. They've accounted for nothing. They've accounted for nothing. Let's keep going. I'm going to step through it fast. Let's see. Then there's this. Tom Perez explaining Donna Brazile, why Donna Brazile coming out saying they cheated Sanders. Let's listen to Tom Perez in this train wreck interview.
But I got to ask you about Donna Brazile, Tom. Obviously, she's railing against the DNC in her new book. We've seen her all over the place, revealing fresh divides within the party in the aftermath of the 2016 election. And she had some choice words for her critics. Listen to this. Got to get your reaction, Tom.
For those who are telling me to shut up, they told Hillary that a couple of months ago. You know what I tell them? Go to hell. I'm going to tell my story. I'm going to tell my story, George. And I say go to hell because why am I supposed to be the only person that is unable to tell my story?
What is going on, Tom? What is her motive? Why do you think she's doing what she's doing?
Hey, Donna's a good friend, and I think you need to ask her that question. What I can tell you, Maria, is I was out on the stump everywhere. There wasn't one person who asked me about Donna Brazile in the past.
Just to interject here, do you honestly believe that? Donna Brazile comes out with bombshell testimony that wasn't really a bombshell because everybody already knew that the DNC was cheating. Even if you only want to inch up to the degree that Donna Brazile talked about it, it was still cheating. It was still cheating. One of the people who were running in the campaign had control of that particular campaign apparatus. That's cheating. Tom Perez is saying, look, nobody asked me about this. Do you honestly believe that? Do you honestly believe that Perez didn't run into any Sanders supporter, anybody who was questioning about this? Everybody that Tom Perez ran into, not one of them had a question of, hey, the head of your DNC, the chair of your DNC said that you cheated the guy in the election. Is that true? Tom Perez says not one person brought this up. I don't believe this. He's still lying.
They were asking me about their health care. They wanted to continue the progress that Terry McAuliffe had made in Virginia. They wanted to make sure we had people who were uniting us and not dividing us. And that's why Donald Trump was on the ballot. And
there was a real division within the party, Tom. I mean, come on. There was a whole conversation happening, and that conversation is going on right now, that it was rigged, that everybody was behind Hillary Clinton and not Bernie Sanders, and that's what Donna Brazile is saying. Let me ask you this. If the Democratic National Committee and Debbie Wasserman Schultz had been neutral, let's say they were neutral and they weren't in the tank for Hillary, would Bernie Sanders have gotten the nomination? And perhaps, would he be president today? What do you think?
Hillary Clinton won the Democratic primary by 4 million votes. She won the popular election by over 3 million votes.
But Tom, now we know it was rigged.
Maria, I understand that.
This is brutal, by the way. It's like, Tom, tell me. I love when her voice is high pitched. I love it. And she's putting a knife in Tom Perez because she's a Republican and Tom Perez is on her network. He's a Democrat. So fair enough. But she's right. Let's be honest. She's right. She's absolutely right. And her questions that she's asking, Tom Perez don't want to answer these questions because they don't necessarily want to have this honest account of, yes, we cheated somebody. They made the political choice that we don't want to talk about it. We don't want to discuss it. We're moving forward. Just like Obama moved forward with Bush. You know, he killed 1 million people, but we're just going to move forward. We're not going to look backwards. Yes, he tortured people, but yes, we're going to move forward. We're not looking backwards. How did you like that? Did you like that idea of Obama moving forward and not looking backwards in those regards? And beyond whether you liked it or not, do you believe that Obama looking forward allowed for Donald Trump to get in office and do just as worse, or if not, start another war if Donald Trump wanted to start a war, given the precedent that presidents can do whatever they want? George Bush invades a country, kills 1 million people. George Bush ends up torturing human beings. And the Democratic president who comes in says, we're moving forward and continues the same policies. Donald Trump gets elected. People flip out like, oh my God, what if he attacks Iran? Yeah, what if he attacks Iran? But you've already given the precedent for George Bush. Did you like this idea of moving forward and not looking back? And do you want this to be something that takes place within the Democratic Party if you yourself are going to be part of that party? What about the lawyers who took DNC Jared back, took him to court, and the DNC makes the argument that we can cheat or we can do this in a smoke-free room if we want? That's not necessarily legal. And he's right. Democratic Party is a corporation. It's not necessarily legal, but do you like it? How does it make you feel? And the idea that they haven't necessarily addressed these things honestly, why on earth would you consider Sanders winning this if they haven't necessarily addressed these things honestly? Let's keep going. I'm making the point of a pattern of deceit. That's what I'm making the point. Then take a look at this. DNC chair shakeup. We're united, and then the purges. The purges. The people who supported Ellison, the people who supported Sanders, purged. One of the longtime supporters of Bernie Sanders. Right here. Once again, the DCCC is pushing out progressives in favor of their handpicked clients. With their track record, they ought to step aside and let voters decide. Here's a question. If Bernie Sanders has won, if he's won the ideological divide, meaning he's pulled the Democratic Party over, why are Sanders supporters screaming about being cheated or about the process not being fair? Explain that to me. That makes no sense to me. Explain that to me. How on earth has the Sanders wing won? How on earth has Sanders conquered the Democratic Party? And yet, the people who are Sanderites, Berniecrats, are not getting a fair shake. Like I said, Tim Canova had to get out the party. He was running as an independent. Ronan, in Ohio, is running as a Republican. Neither one of these people thought they were getting a fair shot. Let's go beyond that. 78 Democrats vote to weaken key Wall Street legislation. They turned in line with Republicans. Again, Sanders, socialists, is not on board for this. What about Howard Dean? Where's Howard Dean? Right here. If President Obama had crossed the state red line in the sand, Syrian disaster would not have happened. Now, Donald Trump has come out and said we're going to take troops out and everything else. He was attacked for saying we're going to take troops out of Syria. He was attacked by Democrats. If you've done your job consistently, this would not have happened. Why are you such a wimp in the face of Assad and Putin? This is Democrat Howard Dean talking about a war. Now, in saying this, Bernie Sanders has come out saying that he doesn't necessarily believe that the Syrian conflict is illegal. You have some Democrats who are pushing for war, And Sanders is saying they don't necessarily think that's legal. Now, you can find some Democrats who are going to say that we don't necessarily think this is legal. Fair enough. I'm making the point that you've cherry-picked certain Democrats, and you've used those cherry-picked Democrats as being indicative of the party. And I'm saying that is not indicative of the party apparatus. In fact, let's go further. Yes, there's more. I have a lot of these. So I'm trying to keep it short. Bernie Sanders warns Democrats about meddling in the primaries. Now, why is Bernie Sanders doing that? The Democratic Party is now publicly attacking progressive candidates. The DCCC, the DNC, actively attacking lefty candidates. How on earth has Sanders conquered longtime officials frustrated with the delegate shakeup because they were purges? I'm making the point that how on earth has Sanders conquered the Democratic Party if the Democratic Party is attacking those people who are most closely aligned with Bernie Sanders? That doesn't make sense. You may find one or two members of the party. You may cherry pick some people who may toe a particular line. But when you're talking about the Democratic Party, the apparatus itself, that apparatus hasn't changed. Hasn't found the need to change. It's been able to scream Trump and Russia and been able to coax using the Trump and Russia thing. And there's more. And I'll leave it on this. And I'm putting these articles at the bottom. The resistance would be underwritten by corporations. The grassroots fundraising strategy isn't enough. Democrats need big money. You know who's not on board for the big money thing? Bernie Sanders. You know why he's not on board for the big money thing? Because he understands you can't serve two masters. If you have one side of your party that's full of plutocrats, and those plutocrats are like Klobuchar there saying, we're paying you, we're fundraising you, we're sticking money in your G-strings, we are the person who are controlling you. Well, you can understand that that's going to be somewhat of a problem if you have this other part of the wing that's completely antagonistic to those people being bought in that way. Just because they're whispering sweet nothings, just because they're saying these things, doesn't necessarily mean that they're going to enact these things once they get into office. And if they get into office, Sanders has allowed them to be better liars by tuning themselves into what they believe the public wants to hear, while at the same token, still being underwritten by corporations. What they say is not necessarily indicative of what they do. And just because they're saying something, a few of them are saying something, that is not the exact same thing as the Democratic Party itself being conquered or changed or taken over by anything, especially not Sanders. I welcome Jeff Spross onto the show if he wants to have this debate. Like I open it up all the time when I try to do a post on somebody. But yeah, dude, I'm sorry. You're wrong. You're completely wrong. Emphatically wrong. Without hedge. Unabashedly wrong. Sanders hasn't conquered squat. He's changed the conversation. I give you that. I agree with that wholeheartedly. He's given a certain amount of political space and political latitude. But that space and latitude is more so for the left to work in. It's not necessarily that the party had changed itself. There's a difference in those things. When the Democratic Party starts passing legislation on that stuff, I would say you're right. The party itself hasn't been inspired or changed. When you have more members getting into office and those members are actively changing stuff, I would agree with you. But that's not what we have. That's not what we have. So I will leave it at that because I have something to do, but I'm going to be back. Let's see. Electoral fraud exposed the DNC, FBI, CIA, NSA, Department of Justice, and mainstream media. It's huge, and we cannot let it stand. I agree with you on a lot of that. I think some of these guys are useful idiots, but I agree with you that there's immense problems with the way that these things have fallen out. Continue at 20. Sanders was neutered by the DNC. He lost all his fight. He is a shell of his former self. He was a shell of his former self because I think he wants to run in the primaries, which means that he has to essentially kowtow to the Democrats in some way, meaning he needs to be muzzled to a certain degree. There's certain things he'll say. He's still Sanders. There's a flash of him that's still exposed. But there's a difference between Sanders running as a politician in a political race where he feels he has no chance, he can just be himself and be unabashed, and Sanders as a politician who has certain political allegiances that he needs to adhere to. Those are different. So I agree with you. Yeah, I agree with you. I agree with you to some degree. Let's see. Pat Cook. Gotta run. Keep the home fires burning. And if I'm not back... Okay, I missed the part because it's going up. All right. I'm going to end this. I have a few more that I want to do tonight, but I have husband duties. So I'll see you guys probably within 30, 45 minutes or so. All right, guys. If you enjoyed the content, please feel free to share, like, subscribe, and of course, you can always support through Patreon. This one has gone a little bit long, but all the links are in the bottom to the articles that I brought up so you can read for yourself. I know I put a lot of links at the bottom for the stuff, but I put it because I want you to see my thinking and where I get my thinking process from. So I will leave it at that. You guys have a good one. I'll see you in about an hour. Thanks, guys.